The recipe for the pear butter will be at the end of the video, and it will be long enough that you can put it on pause and do a screen save. If that doesn't work, then just go to our YouTube channel and send us a message. Our email address is on there. All right, let's get on with today's vlog. I don't think I'm ever going to get this right. Here are my pears, and of course I've got 2 bowls of water. Now, if you're somebody who's peeled pears before to prepare them, they will oxidize and turn brown fast. So I have some real lemon juice here. I'm going to put a little squirt in both bowls of water, and that's just to keep my pears from turning real dark. Now, when I'm making pear butter, that probably isn't going to matter that much, but I just prefer that it doesn't turn. You might ask, well, why is there two bowls of water? Well, the first one, I'm going to drop the pears over it, and that'll wash any seeds or little ends that I get cut up with a pear that get on it. That'll wash it. So when I move it over to that second bowl, it's basically clean and ready just for me to pour the water out and go into my pan to be cooked. All right, all of you may have a way that you like to peel your pears, but my favorite way is to cut that little top off and cut a little bit off of the bottom of it. And then rather than go round and around, I just find that for me it moves much quicker if I'm just peeling up each side. And I did pick these off the tree, so they're not bruised like pears would be that lay on the ground, but they have sat on the counter for about a week. Of course, when I brought them home, they were fairly green, and they've sat there and ripened and gotten real good and soft. I guess I should have been talking to you when I was peeling that, but I can't talk to you and peel pears at the same time. Now, I quarter these, and then I take, and yes, I use this pan that the pears are in to put my scraps in, and then the scraps will go out into my compost bucket to be taken down to the compost bed. And I just cut them in quarters. I'm taking that rough, pears have like a little hard core in the center. So all I'm doing is just cutting that out, making sure I've got all the spots, putting it over into that lemon water so it doesn't turn brown. And as I said, that first bowl, this one here, is just to wash this stuff in. All right, you can see that I did not have enough room in one bowl to move the pears. Looks like I'm going to have maybe a batch and a half. And pear jam has no fruit pectin in it. It's just your pure cane sugar, your fruit, and your seasonings. So it's not as critical to have the measurements absolutely exact. So I'll just measure these out in a bowl. And actually 2 quarts of pears is what it takes to make one batch. I've got my pan that I use to do my boiling water baths, and I want you to look. That yellow rim there, that's a stain. That's turmeric. I had a jar of pickles in a regular canning jar and a boiling water bath that the bottom come out of the jar. I must have tightened it too tight and the pressure knocked the bottom out. I tried to get them only finger tight, and that's a good example. Make sure when you're doing a boiling water bath that it's just finger tight. And of course that's the rack out of my pressure canner. I've mashed these down in there. Normally you would chop it into smaller pieces and you need 2 quarts. This bowl holds exactly 2 quarts. So they're going over into my stainless steel pot. Now comes the thing that I have to really look at. I have to look and see how much extra I have here. Now these have been washed and rinsed. Alright, so I'm just going to take the back of my hand here and mash them down a little bit. And I have just probably about 2/3 of a quart there. So over into the pot they go. All right, so I've got these in here. To get them started, most recipes say to put a little water in them. I don't really like doing that. I'd rather put a little apple juice. During the canning season, I buy extra jars of the unsweetened, all-natural apple juice. So I'm gonna put a little apple juice in there. And I'm not sponsored by anybody, but I'm just making sure that it says 100% juice. And as I said, you don't want to put too much in here, because if you put too much in to get it started, you're going to need to boil this off a little bit anyways as it cooks, so it just takes longer to cook it down. All right, we're going to set that at a temperature of medium-high to get started. And that is not the spoon I want to cook this with, because as it gets thicker, it can pop. Gonna use this just to set my spoon in. And of course, over here, I already have my jars in the boiling water bath. The boiling water bath's heating up. To me, it's just easier to do it that way. Now, I'm gonna get a little thing called a bar mat to go down here, and that just makes it easier for me to work. Be right back. Okay, I watched another YouTuber, and she bought these off Amazon. So what do? I go to Amazon and do it. It's just a bar mat. And it is perfect to set there, and especially when you've got a stove and a counter, it keeps anything from getting down in there. I've not got it close enough over here for it to actually melt. Okay, I'm gonna take my little funnel and sterilize it in this scalding water here. Set it over on a plate, so I'll be ready. Now I'm going to get my vinegar and a cloth to wipe the tops of my jars. I'm just stirring the pears. I will use an emulsifier on them once they get tender, but all I'm trying to do right now is just cook them to where they're tender. And as you can see, they're beginning to cook up enough that as I turn them, they're starting to break apart. I need them to get mushy. Okay, this is my setup here. I have my spoon here, which actually goes over here. This is the plate to put the jars in. I have my funnel to put the pear butter in my jars. I'm going to use this to take my hot jars out as I fill them. I have my pears cooking, and as you can see, I have my jars here in my boiling water bath. Now I've turned my pears down. They're starting to boil rather rapidly here. I do not want them to scorch, so I've turned them down, and I'll continue to cook them. The steam that's coming off is good. That's just excess moisture cooking off. So now, rather than waiting for them to break apart, I'm going to use my emulsifier here on them and chop them up. You can see it looks more like pear sauce now instead of pear hunks, so I'm ready to start adding the spices. Now when you see me add these spices, per batch it's 6 cups of sugar, so that's measuring out enough for 6 and enough for 2/3 of a quart. Remember, the full batch was 2 quarts. So I'm going to put in my sugar at this stage. And this is my son's great-grandmother's recipe. This came from a lady that lived down in the Genesis community when there was a community down there in Cumberland County. Now, this is going to seem like a lot of cinnamon, but this is what the recipe calls for. And I questioned it myself the first few times I made it, but trust me, it is so delicious. It works perfectly. So for each batch, it's 3 tablespoons of cinnamon. And I already had it measured out. And for each batch, it's 1 tablespoon of ground cloves. Now all I need to do is start stirring this and cooking it until it gets thick. And of course, in addition to my spices, I have to add some white vinegar. It's 1/4 cup per batch for 2 quarts of apples. So That was a little more than 1/4 of a cup because I have that extra 3/4 of a cup. Now it's time for me to turn this eye up and get this stuff boiling rather rapidly. Now, that's the color we wanted this to be. And of course, the color comes from the spices. And the flavor, oh my goodness, the flavor is just unbelievable. I have turned my pan back up to a medium high just to bring it to a boil. Because of course, all that sugar cooled down my mix, and I'm trying to boil off some of the liquid here. So as soon as it starts boiling, I'll turn it back down on low, and we're going to simmer it until it gets thick enough. And it's already feeling pretty thick, trust me. With this spoon, it doesn't take, I think last time it was about 15 minutes until it thickened up. Might have been 20, but I'll just keep stirring it. And as I said, as soon as it comes to a rolling boil, I'm going to turn it down. Now I have my lids washed as per the directions on the box in soapy water, and they've been rinsed. Since I'm putting these in a boiling water bath, I do not have to boil them. They're going to be in the boiling water bath 10 minutes for lower elevation. Because I'm at a higher elevation, they'll be in there for 15 minutes. So they do not have to boil. They're going to get plenty of heat in that boiling water bath for 15 minutes. Okay, I've got a slow boil coming, but I want a good rolling boil. Once we come to a good rolling boil, as I said, I'm going to turn it down on simmer, and I'll simmer this stuff. And yes, my jars have been sitting in that water, steaming hot water. I'll be turning it up so it starts to boil soon. They are sterilized and ready for my pear butter to go in them. All right, my pear butter now is on a good rolling boil, so it's time for me to turn it down on low. I have to keep stirring it because if I don't, it will scorch and stick. So I definitely put all this work in it. I don't want to lose it now because I get lazy and don't want to stir the pot. Okay, see how that's clinging to the spoon? That's how you want it to do. I know it has simmered long enough. The 20 minutes was a perfect time for it. All right, let's get our first hot jar out of the water here. Pour our water out of it and get started. I've already taken, I'm going to lay that over there, keep everything clean as possible. I've already laid my ladle over in the hot water to keep it dry. And I'm wanting to fill this to within about a 1/2 inch of head space. And I don't measure it. I've done this often enough that I know it. So now let me get some vinegar on a cloth. Because I don't want to take a chance of losing these because I left sticky residue on the top. So just gonna take that cloth damped with vinegar and make sure I've got all that washed off. And as I stated, I did not have to boil my lids because this is going in a boiling water bath. And I know several people, you know, if you want to do that, that's fine, but it's not required. Now remember, I had a jar the other day that burst the bottom out of the jar because I put that too tight. You only want that finger tight. Should have been using this jar attachment here to put that in. I'm going to do several of these smaller ones as well. This stuff makes excellent gifts to give to people. And I like to use a little jelly jar when I'm giving it to somebody. It's just a little more decorative. Okay, it's got me to about a 1/2 inch. And on that one, I have quite a bit of residue on the top, so I'm going to wipe it off. Put my lid on it and put it over here in my boiling water bath, which is not quite boiling, but I'll turn it up. Make sure that's just finger tight, that I've not got it too tight. You know, if you looked up the word clumsy in the dictionary, and you've heard me say this before, my name will be right next to it. I don't know how in the heck I cause that spoon to jump off, but I do stuff like that all the time. All right, let's fill another jar. And once we get them all over in the boiling water bath, I'll show you what it looks like. This would be a lot easier if I take this spoon out and stir it. I'll head over here. Trust me, I'm going to lick that spoon when I get through here. I love the flavor of this stuff. Okay, there my jars are in the boiling water bath, and as you can see, I have approximately 6 pints. And with that partial over there, if I'd have done another jelly jar, I'd have had 6.5 pints canned, but that's fine. I love having leftovers. And my temperature, I'm going to turn that up a little bit higher so this starts boiling, and then I will time it for 15 minutes. Not only do I like to garden, I like to put up the produce that I raise and the fruits that I have in the area, especially on my grapevines, etc. I just like to prepare for the coming winter. To me, home canned and homegrown vegetables, as well as jellies and jams that you do yourself, are so much better than what you buy in the store. And you know that they do not have any chemicals sprayed on them or any chemical fertilizer used on them. The recipe for the pear butter will be at the end of the video, and it will be long enough that you can put it on pause and do a screen save. If that doesn't work, then just go to our YouTube channel and send us a message. Our email address is on there.